The Hitman who breathed again? Rafael Sombra didn't get his name from the shadows he worked in, but from the shadow that followed him, a perpetual, suffocating anxiety that had become his only constant companion. For 15 years in Medellin, the rhythm of his life was the beat of a distant siren, the sharp crack of a 9mm, and the frantic, shallow gasps between one job and the next. He was a professional cleaner, a man whose hands knew the weight of a silenced pistol better than they knew the warmth of sunlight. The last job was simple: 2 clicks, 20 seconds, clean getaway. But that night, the fear didn't dissipate. It locked his lungs down, tightening his chest until he thought his ribs would shatter. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of being alive. He liquidated everything, shed his life like a snake shedding skin, and drove south until the concrete ended and the air changed. He found himself on a remote, jungle-laced coast, a place where the sound of the ocean swallowed all other noises. He rented a small, forgotten shack and tried to sleep. But the anxiety attacks were relentless, violent surges of adrenaline that made him relive every face, every final moment he had orchestrated. One stifling afternoon, driven out of the shack by shaking hands, he walked into a wooden pavilion near the beach. He thought it might be a boxing gym, a place where he could hit something until the memories went numb. Instead, he found silence, incense, and 20 people sitting cross-legged on mats, their eyes closed. The instructor, a small woman named Clara with eyes the color of worn granite, didn't seem to notice the coiled tension in his posture, the constant readiness to fight or flee. "Welcome," she said softly. "Today we simply breathe." Rafa, feeling ridiculous, sat awkwardly on the back row.
Breathe?
He'd been doing that wrong his whole life. His breaths were short, panicked sips of air, just enough fuel for the next burst of violence. Clara began the instruction for the foundational pranayama, the 3-part breath. She asked them to push the air first into the belly, then the ribs, and finally the chest. Rafa tried. The moment he tried to control the air, his chest panicked. The harder he tried to expand his diaphragm, the more the air seemed to catch, rattling in his throat like a jammed shell casing. Sweat slicked his palms. He wanted to run, to scream, to smash something, anything, to make the internal pressure stop. Clara, without opening her eyes, spoke as if reading his mind. The mind is a wild horse galloping away from what is. The breath is the rein. It does not force the horse, it guides it home. He didn't know what that meant, but he kept trying, fueled by the desperation of a drowning man. He focused on the cool brush of air entering his nose and the warm exhalation leaving his lips. Belly, ribs, chest. On the 10th cycle, the tension eased. On the 20th, the familiar panic receded, replaced by a strange, overwhelming fatigue. It was the first time in 15 years that his body had been still. He returned the next day and the day after that. The breath became his new weapon, his new discipline. The inhalation was a clean slate. The exhalation, the release of the phantom pistol in his hand. He learned to use the breath to search the dark corners of his memory not with a gun, but with acceptance. Years passed. Rafael became Rafa, a man with calloused hands who moved with a quiet, deliberate grace. The dark shadow had lifted. The former hitman, whose profession demanded he never look at the humanity of his victims, now spent his days teaching others how to sit, how to look inward, and how to find peace in the simple, profound act of drawing air. He never forgot the darkness, but now, when the sirens of memory wailed, he didn't run. He just breathed, slow and deep, guiding the wild horse home.